Welcome back to The Avenue. And on this channel, we help you build a future of financial options instead of retiring with financial regrets. And today, I have a question for you. Do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you? That's the question. And you know what I'm talking about. Buying that big house that you can barely afford for people to come over that you don't even like, or they may not even come over. Or buying that car with a car payment bigger than all the money that you have in your savings account. That's something that we need to think about, you guys, because sometimes we do things and the things that we buy, the things that we have actually owns us instead of us owning them. We're going to talk about that, so stay tuned. You and I both know we live in a world that screams, you need more, you need more. And to be successful, they give us pictures on TV, on YouTube, on various stations and channels that you just need more to look successful. But that more that you're getting, you may be screaming that you're broke in silence. And that's something that you don't want to do. You're working extra jobs, perhaps just to make ends meet. And it's owning your life just by trying to stay up. Even your family pressures. You need more. You need to get this. You need to get that. Look what we have. You look at your neighbors, what they have, and you want to get that. You want to get just to seem like you are successful. And so that's a trap. It's a trap that we really don't want to fall into. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's show. So that we are clear, stuff is really not the problem. The problem comes in when the stuff actually owns you, or you define yourself by what you have. That's when the problem comes in, because if you have a car payment that is like a mortgage, that is not freedom, that is bondage. So we have to be crystal clear about, there's nothing wrong with the stuff. I have stuff, but the stuff doesn't have me. The stuff doesn't own me. You know, you should be the person before you get the stuff. The stuff doesn't make the person. The person should be able to handle the stuff, whether your friends like it or not. And you don't want to be in bondage behind all the stuff that you have just because society says something, just because your friend says something, just because you're trying to keep up with somebody. Don't let that ruin your life doing that type of thing as far as the stuff. You make sure you're the owner of your stuff. So let's talk about why this happens. This happens because over in America, for most of us, basically, sometimes we define and ID ourselves by our possessions, what we have, to just say that we've made it successful. We've seen other people, and we think that if you have the big house in a nice neighborhood, if you drive a certain car in that neighborhood, that you've made it. And these possessions are actually your identity, instead of you having your own self-identity, knowing who you are with or without these possessions. But when we let the possessions get in front of us and say that we've made it if we drive a certain car, or we've made it if we live in a certain house, a big house, or in a certain neighborhood, that is the thing that bugs us and can take us into the wrong direction when these possessions actually have us, and these possessions are our identity instead of the other way around. Sometimes it's a childhood dream or the way we were raised. If we've seen something and we say, once we get out of the hood, or once I grow up, I want to own that. If you've seen somebody when you're a child and they were successful, but they drove a certain car, or they lived in a certain neighborhood or something like that, and you define that as success and you're shooting toward, that is success. So this is what I want to do when I get out, and I can identify that that is success for me. So as a child, you may have grown up and when you have arrived by what your little mind thought that was the definition of success. And we don't want to fall into that trap either. But it's easy to do, and you can understand how it happens when you're a kid. You've been in a certain environment. When I was a kid, I was in a certain environment, and I was influenced by my dad's boss. I saw he drove a Cadillac. I saw the house he lived in. I saw the kind of Christmas tree he had when he invited us over. All of that made an impression on me. And yes, one day, since he was successful and he had money, he had a lake house and all of this, one day it's like, yeah, I aspired to have some of that stuff too, but that stuff was not going to have me. I was not going to go into debt trying to say that I'm successful because I have these types of things. This is a big one. Keeping up with the Joneses, or in today's term, keeping up with the Instagrammers, because on Instagram, we see all of these people flashing all of this stuff. The Rolls Royces, we see people flashing that. The big houses, the pools, these yachts, having these big parties, these lavish parties. We see them eating steaks, eating lobsters, doing all of this stuff. And we try to live our lives just the way they live their lives. And some of them may actually have the money. Some of them may be in loads and loads of debt by trying to do that and show it on Instagram, show it on YouTube, show it on Facebook, wherever they're showing it. And we're trying to keep up with these people. Sometimes we see it on TV, on these housewives of this and housewives of that. We see what they do, we see what they wear, and even we see it in the football arena. I've been watching football lately, and the kids that are at the high schools that are getting these NIL deals, they're wearing these big chains, big chains that are very expensive. And that's what they do. They have the tennis shoes on. And the kids may be watching this and thinking, okay, they've made it. And the way I'm going to define that I've made it is that I get me a big chain, or I get me some type of Jordans or some shoes, some tennis shoes to put on just like they're doing. And so this is all in front of us, and we're taking note of this. We're looking at it. And yeah, sometimes we may desire that, but we should not go into debt to get it, because you've not made it if you go into debt to get it. These kids that are doing that, they may not be in debt. They may be spending all their money on these things, which is not the right thing to do. There are some kids out there that are stars in their own right as far as athletics, and you don't see them with big chains on. You don't see them flaunting this and flaunting that. They're doing the right thing with their money. Some of them have money managers to help them out with this. So let's take this into consideration and just think about all of this. But we should not be trying to keep up with the Instagrammers and what they're doing. We don't know what kind of bills that they're paying every month in order to do that. Because I'll tell you, the bigger the house, the more you're going to have to start paying with the utility bills, the lawn care, and everything else. If something goes wrong, and if you had a normal size house, you may have one AC unit. If the house is larger, you may have 2 or 3 AC units. And if one goes down, you got to repair that. But you have 2 more that could go down potentially. Hot water heaters, however you look at it, you may have, with a normal size house, you may have 1. But with another size house, you may have 2 or 3. So there's extra expenses when it comes to the things that, and then the housekeeping. You get a whole bunch of rooms in a house. Who's going to clean up all those rooms? You may have to hire a maid at some point in time. There are things that you don't consider when all these people are showing all this stuff. But it's not only getting it, it's sometimes maintaining it also. All these cars that they're getting. Expensive cars that are out there, but when you take it in, an expensive bill just for maintenance, even if it doesn't break, to take it in to get the oil change and stuff like that, it's going to be an expensive bill. So we have to keep all this in mind when we're trying to keep up with the Instagrammers instead of the Joneses nowadays. Sometimes there's emotional spending to fill a temporary void. And this is a temporary high, you guys. There may be a void there. You may feel lonely. You may feel bored. You may feel a little depressed. So you'll go out and buy some things and spend that money. But it's a temporary high, because once you come down, you're still back at that place. So that's another thing that we have to watch, the emotional spending to fill something that at the moment it hasn't been filled. And let's be honest, if you're lonely, you're lonely, and you may go out and buy something at that moment, but after you come back, you're still lonely. You're still lonely. So keep that in mind, and we need to keep these emotional spending up under control, because it can get you into some trouble, more trouble than it's worth, because you have to pay that bill off after the high comes down and you're still in that same position that probably you were before you bought that. And the last reason why I'll discuss with you is it's sometimes because you don't know about finances. You just don't understand it. Financial literacy is not there, so you don't know. And so if this is the case, sometimes you go out and spend money that you probably shouldn't spend. You may not have a budget. You may not have an emergency fund. You just may not know certain things about money. So you make those mistakes. Hopefully, if you make them early and you can still recover from making them. The best thing to do is try to learn as much as you can about finances and not fall into this trap of going out, buying a bunch of stuff, thinking that you have made it or you're successful. That's not what you want to do. Sometimes we think that if you make a high income, it means that you're successful, right? Or you have a lot of money. That's not all the way true. Sometimes you can make $1 million, but if you spend $1,000,001, or if you have bills coming into your house that you have to pay out $1,000,001, guess what? You're broke, right? So it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And what are you doing with what you keep? Are you investing that? What is your net worth at that point in time? Sometimes we think if we see luxury and they have all these luxury things, that this means that they are wealthy. That's not all the time the case. They could be spending a bag every month on trying to take care of these things or keep up with these things that they've purchased or that they've bought. They could be drowning in debt because of all these items that they've purchased. So just because what you see, it doesn't always amount out to what it really is. So don't be faked out by the high income or somebody living in luxury, because it may not be what it seems like. While this may not be your favorite video at this point in time, I am going to help you. So hit that like button and that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on the latest information as I'm bringing it to you. We've gotten over the roughest part right now, which is the honest truth. And some of you can see yourself in some of these positions. Now we're going to offer some suggestions that can help you break out of this, your items actually owning you instead of you owning and possessing those items. Now let's talk about how to get out of this trap. First thing I want you to do is reclaim your identity. Know that you are not the car that you drive and you are not your zip code. You are more important than the car that you drive or your zip code. The value in you is in your character, who you really are, what you think about yourself, what God says you are. That's who you are. Makes no difference, what you drive. The best car that I know of is a paid off car. That's the best kind of car to drive. And if you're living in a house and it's paid off, that's a great house. So let's not just get so caught up into these things that we lose sight of who we really are, because the value is in you. There's no car that's going to make you any better person than you already are. There's no house that's going to make you any better person than you already are. I know for me, I make the car does not make me. I can drive, I have two cars. I can drive my truck and feel just great, or I can drive my other vehicle and feel just great. So it's not about what I'm driving, but I own them. They do not own me, because I can get rid of either of them at a drop of a hat. So it's not about that. So let's keep that in mind when it comes to it. You are the person that you wake up with. You're the person that you go to sleep with. You're the person that's around those friends. And if those friends have to judge you by what you drive or where you live, you may want to check your friends. The next step I will tell you is to embrace quiet wealth. I love stealth wealth. That nobody knows what's going on with your wealth because you're not flaunting it everywhere. They don't know anything about you really because you're not showing it. You're not wearing it. You're not driving it. You're not living in it. Your wealth is your wealth, and you don't have to worry about other people trying to figure it out. Some of them will figure it out because of the things you do and if you bring up conversations about where you're investing or something like that, they may eventually figure it out. But there's nothing wrong with living within your means, living that debt-free life. If you don't want to be in debt, get out of debt and live the debt-free life. Live the life that you can sleep well at night. It's freedom, you guys. You don't have to make all these payments all the time. That's not where you want to be. And eventually in the future, you can start buying what you want to buy because you don't have a bunch of bills on you. And so that's where you can really show up but you don't have to spend money for anybody. You don't have to show anybody anything. You should have nothing to prove to anybody. If you feel like driving whatever you want to drive, that's fine. Pay for it cash or have a plan to pay it off in a hurry. So, and you can live wherever you want to live, but don't live in bondage by the things that you purchase or the possessions that you have. Now I want you to go on a detox from social comparisons, because sometimes we need to cut off the TV, cut off the housewife or whatever. If it's going to cause us to error, sometimes we need to step out of some social places if it's going to cause us to error, being around people that probably is as broke as you are, but they're pretending like they have money. Sometimes you need to let go of some of those groups and get around people that talk about freedom, that talk about investing, that talk about having flexibility with their money, talk about income, talk about something other than the possessions that they have or what they're going to buy, that type of thing. There's a different conversation out there. You may not have experienced it before, but if you stay on this channel, you're going to find out that I talk a different conversation when I'm talking to you guys, as well as when I'm talking to friends, because when I'm out, people ask me questions about certain things, and I'm willing and ready to give them answers on the things that they're asking me questions on. So sometimes we need to let go of the social. So I look at one housewife show and I look at some other shows, but I don't watch a lot of TV, and it does not have that type of influence on me. I can see those ladies doing what they're doing, and some of them live in beautiful houses, dressed beautifully, makeup from head to toe. You know, they have all the hair stuff going on, the wigs and the sew-ins and all this kind of stuff. They have all that stuff going on. It costs plenty of money, and it's impressive to a certain point, but I don't want that. That's not me. I don't want that. And so they can have whatever they're doing as long as they're paying for it. Because sometimes, you guys, we look at TV, then we start reading about these people being bankrupt and owing taxes to federal income taxes and all this kind of stuff. So everything that you see is not really what is really going on, is what I'm trying to say. So sometimes we need to let go of social or people or groups that are not benefiting us, that are not moving us in our right direction. The last tip I will give you is to build assets and not just buy things. Okay, we need to go ahead and try to invest money in things that will appreciate in value and not depreciate. Because even with the cars, that is an asset, but it's a depreciating asset. Sometimes we just buy things and it just goes down, down, down in value. What you want to do is spend more money on assets, building your money up, letting your money work for you so you can use it in the future, rather than buying stuff that's just going to depreciate or you're going to consume and you have nothing. Such as when you buy food, and we all have to eat, but when you buy certain things, you consume it and there's nothing left to show that this is where you spent your money, right? So make sure we're investing in the right thing when we're spending our money, and not just purchasing things, but let's invest in the right items. What I'd like for you to do is to start living in your power and your purpose. You don't need to necessarily look wealthy. You need to be wealthy. I always said that I would rather have a nice leather purse that maybe costs, $100 and have $10,000 in the bank, rather than have a $10,000 purse and $100 in the bank. That just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't add up financially. So let's start living more toward freedom and our purpose, instead of trying to impress others and have this stuff, these possessions, own us. I want you to start owning your possessions. And with that, I will see you in the next video.